I was dropping the kids off at school today,
Yes.
which in podcast land is the other day. And I saw an EV dropping some kids off, and I was like, man, that looks suspiciously like a vehicle that I know, but also not like the vehicle that I know. I'm like, what? Is that really what I think I'm looking at? I didn't even know these things were out yet. It's fascinating when you just stumble upon something and you're like, but these aren't available yet. Yet here it is right in front of my eyes on the streets. Either I've not been paying attention or somebody's got like a super special handshake or something.
VIP deal.
Yeah, VIP access, which is possible in my area. I'm in California, in Southern California. I'm Phil Royle. I'll tell you what I saw in just a minute. But first, I will direct you to thewhatcar.com/store, where you can purchase paraphernalia like shirts or sweaters, hoodies that I've got on to help support the blog and the podcast. And for that minimal fee, you get me that has, I'm downgrading my experience level now, 15 years plus of experience as a content creator and automotive journalist and podcaster now, I guess. And somebody who tries to get you to buy shirts continuously, because I'll pitch you again on this later on in this episode.
Ed Sanchez, I make no pretenses of hiding my age or longevity.
Pretty soon I'm going to be down to 10 plus years of automotive experience.
20 plus years in, as I like to say, automotive content creation and moderation. Day job, automotive electronics industry analyst, and the Watt Car co-founder and contributor.
An Escalade. Yeah. So what did I see? What did I see? I saw an Escalade, whatever they're called. The
IQ.
I was looking at the back. I meant to look it up. I was trying to read. I took pictures of it on my phone. If you're watching on the YouTube, youtube.com/@thewhatcar is where you can find us. It's an Escalade IQ something or other, but then on one side it said 1000 E4, which I don't know.
I know what it is. It's kind of dumb.
What is that?
Okay, so this is a few years ago, and I don't know who in GM thought this was a good idea. I think it's just confusing. So, because I guess Audi did this for a while. I don't know if they're still doing it. I think maybe in Europe, but so these numerical designations on the back of Cadillacs are supposed to correspond with their torque outputs.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, this has apparently got 1000. I guess E for electric and 4 all-wheel drive.
But it's in metric. So it's Newton meters, roughly. Again, it seems very contrived.
Yeah, but it's also better than working it through the final drive ratio and coming up with 20,000 pound-feet of torque,
12,000 pound-feet,
which is what the Hummer EV was originally advertised with. Yeah, it was like, was it 12,000? I thought it was like 20,000. It was ridiculous.
It was like 11 or 12,000.
Yeah, and we're all like, this sounds like a calculation based on the final drive as you run.
Yeah, the gear reduction.
Yeah. So I saw this thing, and it looked like a Lyric, but bigger, not as slanted at the back, and I don't know, it looked fine. It looked big. You know, I drive a Yukon XL, and this was not as long, but or maybe it was. It didn't seem because the wheelbase, the way it works out,
and I think it's wider and chunkier, and
it's like a Lyric got stung by a whole bunch of bees, and it kind of like puffed up a little bit, but it looked nice. It drove nice, made a lot of noise. The little noisemaker on the thing was louder than.
What does it sound like?
It's just the normal warble. Yeah, just the normal like electric car warble thing that they do that I'm not a big fan of, but it seemed louder than other vehicles. I don't know. It was a happy thing. I see there's a number of people at my kids' school that get these advanced vehicles like before other people. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe these are on the street and they're everywhere and I just don't know it. But one of them was driving a G-Wagon, the electric G-Wagon before that came out. And then I saw the MB, whatever it was, their smaller SUV that Mercedes has that was
EQB, maybe?
EQB, something like that. I saw that before it came. So there's somebody either owns a dealership in my neighborhood at the school, or they know somebody. I live in a decently affluent area where anything is possible. It could be the owner of the franchise, it could be, you know, I don't know, whatever it is. But it's fun to see these things. What I
Mhm.
didn't see is something else that happened in my county. And I don't know if it made national news, but it sure made local news. A local lake, somebody was reversing their truck back, you know, and
Mhm.
to dump their jet skis into the water, and
Mhm.
then I guess lost traction and
Oops.
slid in. And it turns out Cybertrucks don't float. Long
Oh,
story short,
oops.
they had to drag that thing out. And I would say, you know, you can't do that. But you know how many vehicles end up at the bottom of boat ramps? It's a
Yeah.
fairly common occurrence. They pulled it out, it had aftermarket rims on it and aftermarket tires. And I'm
Yeah.
guessing it just was not, they had not picked the appropriate tire to get traction on a wet boat ramp, and then
Yeah.
probably dumped the back in too far and lost traction. And we know the traction, the all-wheel drive system on the Cybertrucks is not exactly ideal
Mhm.
compared to a lot of off-roaders. It seems to get stuck more
Mhm.
than it should. So maybe it had something to do with that, or maybe it's just
Yeah.
another vehicle going a little bit too deep. You see it all the time on YouTube. And if you haven't seen it all the time on YouTube, search on YouTube and you can watch hours of vehicles sliding into boat launch ramp things. What did you want to talk about today? Something about Volkswagen. ID
Um,
everyone?
well, are we gonna even discuss the Escalade news?
Oh, I mean, you know what? Before this podcast started, I specifically moved that news to the top so then we could talk about it. And now I just passed it by. So back up a bit, Escalade IQL. So
Hmm.
what I've just seen, but now they're adding length.
Hmm.
Did they already say they were going to do that? Because the weird thing with this one, with this
Hmm.
Cadillac IQ, is it was already almost the same length, wasn't it?
Hmm.
As an Escalade, as like the long wheelbase Escalade.
As the ESV,
Yeah.
basically, yeah.
So now they're adding more length to it to make this more of a behemoth.
And it already is.
Yeah.
Thank goodness that's four-wheel steering.
Yeah, which I'm seeing on like everything now. It's crazy. It's like all electric big SUVs have those things.
Yeah.
And it looks to help too, based on the little parking lots where I
Yeah.
follow them through. So what's the deal? 4 inches longer, 4.2 inches longer than the standard. 4 inches seems like a good length. As
Yeah.
somebody with multiple kids and a Yukon XL to fit them all, the longer the better.
Yeah, but I mean, so
As long as it goes to the trunk space, because that's always the holdup
yeah.
for me, is you load up the car. So you get like a,
Hmm.
a Tahoe
Hmm.
and you've got 3 rows of seats and you put everybody in there and then you go to put your bags in and nothing fits.
Hmm.
So a Tahoe really only works for road trips if you're not using the third row.
Hmm.
And if you use the third row, it's only good for local stuff. So that's why I got the XL Yukon, which is the equivalent of the Suburban, because then you
Hmm.
can have all 3 rows filled and you've got tons of room inside. So
Hmm.
if that 4 inches goes into the trunk, I would say
So
good deal.
based on what I read on this, most of that extra space goes into the third row for a
Yeah.
while.
It's the kids in the third row. Who cares about
Well,
them?
well, somebody does evidently, but because it's such a because okay, on yours is I think a GMT 800 chassis,
Yep.
right?
Very much so.
So that one, it was a pretty substantial difference between the Tahoe and the Suburban, or the Yukon and Yukon XL. I think it was difference of something like 14 inches
Yeah,
in
it's at
terms of
it's at least a
wheelbase and
foot.
length.
It's at
Yeah.
least a foot.
So to me, that's enough of a difference to make a difference, so to speak. This, it's like, this kind of, to me at least, begs the question, okay, why does the regular Escalade IQ exist? Why don't we just make the standard and that's it? I don't know why you'd make a variant with just a 4 inch difference. It's like,
It is
I
interesting when
don't
you put it in that perspective, isn't it? That this is on the other versions, there was potentially an 8 to 10 inch difference,
know. Or more. Yeah.
more than this.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. So it's like, I mean,
unless they're trying to turn it into like an executive limo style thing, in which case I could see the third row where it's
yeah,
like
no, I
the
mean, I get it, but it's just, I see people looking at the standard one and saying, well, I don't know if they announced the pricing on this. That would be the only thing, is if they're asking like 5 or 8 thousand more, it's like, what are these guys smoking? But if the price difference is like let's say $1,500 or $2,000, I I don't see why people would get the standard one over this, you know?
Even at 4,000, you're talking about $100,000+ vehicle.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
I don't
it's
know
like,
if 4,000
I don't
is
know. I
even.
mean, I'm wondering if a couple of years down the road they're just going to drop the other model and this is just going to be it. But I don't
I
know.
wonder if the Escalade, and maybe this is stuff we should already know. I wonder if the Escalade is built off of an existing chassis, like the Hummer
Uh,
or something, and it's what they had. And then this is actually a different vehicle on a different
okay. Are
chassis.
you well? Okay. Are you talking about the ICE model or the EV model?
No, the EV model. I wonder if the current one that I saw is basically a parts bin car that they've done off of
It
existing EVs, and the IQL is a different
okay.
chassis.
My understanding is the Escalade IQ is a variation of the same chassis as the Hummer, as the Silverado EV, as a Sierra EV. It's their old, the basically full scale old. Are we even saying Ultium anymore? I don't know if that's
I
still a
don't think
thing.
you're allowed
Didn't they
to.
say they're like, oh, we're not saying that
Yeah,
anymore?
no
Anyway,
more Ultium.
no more Ultium. Anyway, it does share a chassis with the Silverado EV and the Hummer EV, as far as I know. So, but again, I mean, if there's no change in wheelbase, you know,
So this doesn't have a wheelbase change at all.
it's the same wheelbase as a standard Escalade IQ. So basically, it just has,
Yeah, you're
my
right. They're
understanding,
gonna
it has
they're
just a
gonna
little
cancel
more.
the one.
Yeah,
They're gonna
it
cancel
just
the
has
other
a little
one.
more rear overhang, and in exchange, there's a little more third row room. I guess with the third row seats up, the same cargo capacity. With the third row down, obviously you gain a little bit of cargo capacity. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's my
so
guess. Is
I think the
yeah,
person who bought one at or whoever's driving one at my school just threw away their money. They should have bought the next one.
well, but they probably will if it's a lease. They'll probably when the lease
Yeah,
is up, they'll
it's
probably get
yeah.
this. But
Money's
anyway,
probably not their concern.
going down in size considerably.
So this vehicle that I tried to talk about a minute ago, but completely missed what I had intended in organizing the show. Uh, do you think the ID.Every1 subcompact would fit inside the Escalade IQL?
Possibly.
What's the deal with
So,
this? So they're saying, didn't I, once again, I say this on every episode. If I were better at my job, I would have looked this up.
well, you only have three
Volkswagen,
kids and a full time job, right? So,
Volkswagen already released some concept like this a couple years ago, didn't they?
slightly different. That one was the ID2 All, which is kind
There
of
you go.
the Polo Golf model.
They went to ID to all to the ID everyone. It's
So I guess everyone
literally
is
the same
even
thing.
more inclusive than all. I don't know. Maybe lost in translation.
So
Anyway,
what's the deal with this? It's a tiny little
uh,
four-door
very small.
cutesy
It's
car.
about the size of a Mini Cooper, um, even though it's a four door. I think um, not not a real fireball in the performance department. The concept had a 94 horsepower or 70 kilowatt motor. So, that's what hot hatches were making in the early 80s.
While weighing 2,000 pounds less.
Well, yeah, yeah. It's front wheel drive, kind of like the ID2 All. They're targeting a price of under 20,000 euros. And they're targeting on sale date of 2027.
This would never come to America, though, would it?
No,
This
this
is
is clearly not really built for the American market. Honestly, to me, I mean, not to be too judgy, but the bang for the buck kind of equation isn't that compelling to me. For that amount of power, for that amount of money, it's like,
the power is remarkably low for such.
yeah.
We don't know the weight, but for such a heavy vehicle, it's safe to say heavy vehicle that uh,
But if they're targeting it toward urban, like the urban market,
yeah,
I mean,
no,
that's
that's kind of
plenty
where
to
I'm.
get around. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I'm kind of going. Is it's not bad when you consider if you're going for a city car that can fit in any parking spot.
Hmm.
It just kind of zips you here, there, and everywhere. If it's very efficient, um, it doesn't take much to charge because presumably a slightly smaller battery. We don't know the battery size of this thing, do we?
No, they did give a range estimate, so they're saying of at least 155-mile range, which is 250 kilometers, which is not much, which indicates to me that'd probably be like maybe a 30 or 40 kilowatt
It's kind of where I was
battery.
thinking.
Yeah,
So I think a good use case, if you can find a good use case for it in
yeah,
Europe and in cities and whatnot, I think this would be fine. Once again, I don't think front wheel drive is bad. I think that's
yeah,
good for
yeah.
inclement weather and daily
If I had
use.
to bet, I'd say this is probably not coming to the U.S., which is fine. I'm fine with. To me, the ID2 all or whatever they're gonna call it was more interesting and compelling, especially the GTI version. Um, so this one Europe can keep it, as far as I'm concerned.
You can keep it, Europe. We don't want it. We're not even going to put a tariff on this. We just don't even want it. So
So
Volkswagen,
all,
though, has
mhm,
kind of gone the opposite direction at the same time.
yeah,
They've said, okay, here you go. Tiny little car that you can store in another car. If it came to America. Low horsepower, probably low voltage, easy, affordable. But how about a nearly 1,000 volt, 2,000 horsepower EV? How about we
yeah.
make those two? So what's
So it's kind of sounds like it. So I guess Oliver Bloom, the VW Group CEO, and if you're if this is the first time you're tuning in, if you didn't know, the Volkswagen Group also owns Audi, Porsche, um, Bugatti, um, Bentley. So a lot of those premium brands.
kind of Remats?
Yeah, Rimac is kind of in that mix, but yeah, that's kind of somewhat beside the point. Although my guess is he might have had a hand in this one way or another, if I had to guess. Anyway,
So they didn't give any specifics. They were just saying future
they
premium
just said we
models,
want to do this.
980 volt,
Yeah.
2000 horsepower, which I was like, so what is a Navera? Is this just, are they just taking that Navera technology that,
Hmm.
so the Navera, the Rimac Navera is a Croatian company, Rimac,
Hmm. Hmm.
and they got, I'm just giving people a little bit of backstory here. Uh, they got combined, I guess,
Hmm.
uh,
Bugatti.
with Bugatti, but a major stakeholder in that, like the big stakeholder is Porsche Group.
Hmm.
Am I correct? And
Yeah. Yeah.
Volkswagen kind of owns
Essentially, yeah.
Porsche. So that's how it all kind of works together in Volkswagen. So I was like, is this just Rimac? Is this just Rimac technology? Is this a Navera? And I had to look up the
VW would be
Navera
very
voltage.
stupid if they didn't leverage that relationship.
Yes, but this is more voltage than the Navera. The Navera is like 700 and something. It's sub
Is it?
800 volt. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
At least according to what I looked up. Because I was like, oh, this is just a fancy way of saying, hey, look at what we're getting out
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
Mate.
Hmm.
And it's not. It might be a variant of it. It might be
Hmm.
born from it, but it might be born from Lamborghini stuff. Like it.
Well, they specifically mentioned Lamborghini in this article in terms of
Oh,
future applications. So if we see this powertrain or chassis, for sure, probably on a future Lamborghini model. My guess would be on the higher end Porsches, um, like the
this
future
is
Taycans or whatever.
where. I'm going to go down a rabbit hole.
Hey, that's my job.
I have no problem with EVs. I have no problem with any of
Yeah.
this stuff. But what I have a problem with is you're going to get cheap or affordable, let's say,
Hmm.
EVs that $20,000 EVs. Let's go back to the Golf, whatever it's called, and the Everyone. And that
Hmm.
Everyone is probably going to be a 400 or sub 400 volt system, which is
Hmm.
fine.
Hmm.
But if you've got to pay to get 800 volts or 1,000 volts or 1,000 plus volts, which is what dictates faster charging by and
Hmm.
large,
Hmm. Hmm.
then I kind of got a problem with that. That the poor have to spend more of their time at a charger charging because they probably don't have off street parking. They probably don't have home charging. They probably have a job where you're not charging at work. So they've got to then
Okay.
go somewhere else. So I've kind of got a problem with that. That said, I have no problem with them doing a Lamborghini with 1,000 volts or
Hmm.
2,000 volts or 5,000 volts because that's a
Yeah.
different class of car.
Yeah.
Nobody's
Yeah.
buying that for daily travel. But I think we need to get to the point where
Hmm.
maybe 700 or 800 volts is standard. And I thought we got there with EGMP and the Hyundai group, and now they're kind of going back and doing like 400
Well,
volts.
okay,
Still
but
holding out hope because
so
800 is a nice number for charging.
yeah.
That's 10 to 80% generally in sub 20
Mhm,
minutes. That's
mhm.
fine to me. That's comparable to filling up a gas vehicle.
Okay,
Tell me I'm
so
wrong.
okay, so I'm going to slightly give a little bit of a counterpoint on this. So I guess my counterpoint to this would be if, in fact, the everyone has, let's say, a 40 kilowatt hour battery, it's kind of relative, right? Because a lot of these vehicles with the 800 plus volt architectures, you're talking 80, 90, 100 plus kilowatt hour batteries. So when you're talking about a battery that's a half or a third of the size as 400 volt architecture, I mean, I guess the point I'm making is I don't know how much of an advantage 800 volt architecture would be on a low cost, compact, smaller battery EV.
And with the right charging curve, if they actually
Yeah.
put the time into it, some of these
Hmm.
400 volt systems, like
Yeah, they're perfectly fine. Yeah.
Teslas are perfectly fine at 400 volts because they've managed to get a good curve with them, a nice strong
Hmm.
charging curve. Whereas with 800, I think you could be a little lazier because you got you
Hmm.
got so much room
Yeah.
to work with,
Yeah.
and so you can optimize. And yes, in city cars, but I
I
hope
mean,
that they don't
I do
say,
think, to your point, I do think 800 volt will become more common and will be, I would say probably you'll see it in like the 35 to 50,000 range vehicles, kind of like the EGMP, even though,
now they've backed off of that. And they're
well, I mean, on the, you know, the front wheel drive, the EV4 variant, but like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't have a strong feeling about this one way or the other. I'd say if it meets people's needs and gets the job done, you know.
Yeah, we have the possibility of something happening that did not happen with ice.
Hmm.
Everybody's car filled at the same rate with gasoline.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, EVs are very different from ICE vehicles. All of a
Hmm.
sudden now you've got this potential of a class differentiation based on like
How
upper
much you
class, lower
paid.
class,
Yeah.
based on how much is your time worth. And
Hmm.
if you cannot afford like your time when you're working three jobs, your time you're not earning a lot, but you need the time to then
Hmm.
say, oh well, it's also going to cost you more time between jobs to fill your car to get
Hmm.
it. We need to, so if we could get
Especially
everything
if
to
you're like
800
a gig
volts,
worker, you know.
yeah, there's so many things. So I
Yeah.
really hope that we don't end up seeing like 300 volt city cars, and then we're like, it's stopping people from getting where they're going.
Yeah.
Volvo is seems to be on an 800 volt uh,
Yeah.
thing with the ES90 sedan. Okay,
Hmm.
I missed this apparently because I saw this in the rundown. You put this in there, and I'm like, did I know this was coming?
Yeah.
And maybe I should have. I don't know, but I
Hmm.
saw it was 800 volts, so I'm like, cool.
Hmm.
So what else do I need to know? Because, like I said, I missed it.
Well, like you said, 800 volt architecture, so positive there. Um, let's see what else. Lift back, so one of my favorite things.
Oh, really? Sweet.
Yes. Yeah. So I was happy about that. They're claiming 434 miles of range, but that's WLTP. So
Still solid. That's going to be over
translated to America,
300 something.
yeah, I'd say 350 plus ish. So they're going to offer this at least in Europe in three powertrain variations. So um, 329 horse, 354 pound-feet for the rear-wheel drive model. 442 horsepower, 494 pound-feet for dual motor all-wheel drive, and then performance model 670 horse, 635 pound-feet. Um, so single motor is going to get a 92 kilowatt hour, 88 usable, um, and support up to 300 kilowatt of DC fast charging. And then the dual motors get 106 kilowatt hour, 102 usable, 350 kilowatt fast charging. Um, and then performance wise, 6.7 for the rear wheel drive, 5.3 for the regular dual motor, and 3.9 for the performance.
That's seconds to 0 to 60 for anybody who is
Yes.
counting. Not just random numbers.
Yeah.
So, oh, and then 110, 112 mile an hour top speed, which is faster than you need.
Yeah.
And it looks like a Volvo.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it looks like kind of a Scandinavian Model S, I guess, for lack of a better term.
It looks nice outside, I'm a sucker for Volvos. What I am kind of disappointed on is the
Hmm.
interior.
Yeah. What
I feel
specifically?
like the big center screen and the big center screen, and then also the like at least it's got a gauge pod right in front of you.
Hmm.
But that design, I don't know, haven't we been seeing that for over a decade now?
Yeah.
I mean, granted, I don't complain about, oh, it's got, a tack and a speedometer in front of you. But
Well,
this is such a
yeah.
basic design. I feel like we need to invent something else at this point for an
Well, I mean,
interior.
so it's kind of funny is if you look at the evolution specifically of interior design of some of the more modern EVs, like um, so for a while, you had the Model 3, then you had the Model S, which for many, many years had the vertical
Hmm.
display. And so, I'm not going to say you can make what you want of this, but for a lot of the other automakers started putting in the vertical displays, thinking that was more upmarket because it kind of emulated the Model S. And then the Model S went to an horizontal display.
Hmm.
So,
And this one's vertical. This one's a portrait
yeah,
style.
yeah. So I think, I don't know, I think that caught some people off guard who thought portrait was classier for some reason. I think an horizontal oriented display is more practical, but um, I don't
Well,
know.
it is and it isn't. I mean, it puts some things closer to you, but other things further away. So it's like,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know. I mean, you can make the same argument with a portrait design that top right is going to be the most difficult to reach. And so that's
Hmm.
not very useful real estate. I want to see the next generation of EV interiors. I want to see
Hmm.
something else. I'm bored of this now. I think the exterior of this car looks great. I'm sure all of the fit and finish inside is going to be fantastic. It's a Volvo. It's going to be great.
Hmm.
But I'm ready. I see these now and I'm like, okay, I just noticed, does this have like an analog clock on the dashboard?
Possibly. I know for a while that was like the little kind of luxury icon was an analog clock.
Oh, it might be a speaker.
Oh,
It's
maybe
weird. There's like
like
just
a
something,
tweeter.
yeah, just randomly
Yeah.
sticking up on this
Uh,
on the center.
oh, yeah. That's kind of a thing with Volvos. If it's on top of the dash, it's probably a
Mhm.
tweeter or a speaker or something.
That's weird. But yeah,
Yeah.
all in all, I like it. It's good.
Anyway.
I like the voltage. But what's interesting is it's nearly as fast as Dodge's like big muscle car EV that they're coming
Hmm.
out with.
Also a liftback,
Yes, new thing. You're going to be happy in our new future, aren't
I
you?
guess, hopefully.
So this is Car and Driver Test the Charger Daytona EV. So this isn't like we know they're going to come up with something like a Hellcat
Yeah,
eventually.
super
They're
duper ultimate.
Yeah, they've
Yeah, but
not
I think
announced
they
it.
teased the Banshee concept. I think that's going to be the EV
Yeah,
Hellcat.
they've not said we're going to do 1,000 horsepower, 1,000 pound-feet of torque, but you know they're going to do 1,000 horsepower, 1,000
Oh,
pound
it's coming
vehicle.
for
You know
sure.
that's happening. So Car and Driver tested. Now this is Charger Daytona EV, which has received generally, I think, meh
Lukewarm.
reviews.
Yeah.
Like nobody was super thrilled with it, but 0 to 60, it's faster than the Hellcat Red Eye, which blew me away because then I looked at the 0 to 60 time in this review and it was like 3.3 seconds, something like that,
Hmm. Yeah.
because it's all wheel drive.
Hmm.
So it blew me away that the Hellcat Red Eye was not faster than 3.3 seconds, 0 to
Well, yeah,
60.
because most of that's wheel spin.
I guess so, but didn't the Red Eye come with, or am I thinking a different model? Which one came with where you could option it with no rear seats and drag slicks?
Oh gosh. Was that the Demon?
Oh, that could be the Demon. Which is the one I tested? Was it the Red Eye?
I think yours was the Red Eye. Yeah. But the
That sounds
Demon
about
had the
right.
seat
Yeah.
delete and the
Yeah,
drag
mine did
slicks and all
mine did
that
not have that.
stuff. Yeah.
So what did they say? Just does it go as fast? I mean, for its power is 600 and something
Yeah.
horsepower or
I
something, and
mean,
it goes pretty fast.
I guess the point they were making is performance wise, it's easily equivalent to the Hellcat, except for top speed. But, you know,
What's the top speed on this one?
I think they said it was 136, which again, faster than you should go on public roads. But
So years ago, I used to run the Silver State Challenge, a high
yeah.
speed street race, quote unquote, in
Hmm.
Nevada. I think it still takes place. I haven't been plugged into that. But there we had BMW 3 Series something or other, not an M, but
Hmm.
like still a sporty model.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
we maxed that thing out and it was like 136 miles an hour. It was
Hmm.
fine. Like you
Hmm.
don't need anything else.
Yeah.
We're just there on the limiter for
Hmm.
half of the run down the road.
Hmm.
And that's fast. I don't know if people realize
No,
that's fast.
really, you should, well, I mean, to be good public citizens, I'm going to say obey the speed limit, but you should never be over triple digits, for a prolonged period on public roads. I mean,
Or for any period.
yeah,
Uh,
unless you're on
ourselves.
those designated stretches of Autobahn in Germany. But
So is this going to be enough to get Dodge fans converted to EV?
I don't
Because right now
know.
we're in a very weird time right
Yeah.
now. Right now we've got the left politically who were
Hmm.
traditionally buying EVs and pushing
Hmm.
for a greener future,
Hmm.
and they're now going away from Teslas. So they need to find something else to
Hmm.
go and drive. Meanwhile, you've got the right who
Drill
traditionally
baby
hate
drill, pickup trucks,
want big
muscle cars.
V8s.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now you've got a vehicle that is traditionally a V8,
Hmm.
but is EV. So the right will have left that market. They're like, I don't want that. It doesn't sound right
Hmm.
because it doesn't sound like anything, even with the Fratsonic exhaust. I don't think that's going to be enough to fool anybody. And then you got the left who'd be like, well, I don't want that because that
This thing's big and
represents
stupid. Yeah.
it represents everything I was railing against just 5 years
Yeah.
ago.
Heavy, inefficient, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
I don't know if this car has a market anymore.
Um, I don't know. It's to be determined. I think it's going to be a hard sell, and I think that's part of the reason why uh, Carlos Tavares is out of a job. Is because he was pushing a very, I would say kind of Eurocentric agenda within Stellantis, and I feel was kind of tone deaf to the U.S. market. So he prioritized the EV version over the six pack, the Hurricane Turbo 6, and now
Did they
the
actually call
new
it the
man.
six pack? Or did you just call it the six pack?
No, the six pack is I think a trim level, but it's
I like that.
yeah. I mean, look it up. I'm pretty sure one of the trims on
That's I want the
the
Hurricane.
upcoming Charger is
If
a
it comes
six
with a
pack. Yeah,
six pack, that's what I want.
yeah. I
I'm
think the
suddenly
six
on
pack is
board.
the
I'm now on board. Let's go all
no
ice. Call the
the
car
the
six
no.
pack.
I think the six pack is the higher horse, so that's the 550 horse Hurricane version. You can
Here,
fact check me on that,
is it the hold my beer package that you get on the six pack?
but anyway,
Oh
I
man,
don't
that
know,
made my
but I
day.
mean, so we're there's something coming up I kind of want to touch on real quick that I think might potentially tie into this whole theme a little bit. Um, I don't know. It depends on if EVs kind of reach a critical mass where they're no longer politicized, where they're considered weird or kind of geeky or whatever, and people
We're gonna be
realize, wow,
very
this is
old.
really quick.
We're gonna be very old
Yeah,
before that happens.
yeah,
This
we'll
is not
see.
it is only ramping up right now.
Yeah.
So what do you want to
Anyway,
get to?
I really want to talk about this last one, then we'll circle back again.
Okay.
Okay, so this has been a little under the radar. I heard of them, but just in kind of esoteric passing terms. It's a company called Tilo. I don't know if you've heard of them. Anyway, another EV startup. So they've come up with this interesting looking little pickup concept. Also small. I mean, getting back to the ID Everyone. Also around the same length as a Mini Cooper. They're claiming a 1,700 pound payload and 6,600 pound towing capacity. So about the same as like a Tacoma, basically. Rear wheel drive and all wheel drive variants, 300 or 500 horse, which for something that size is
Wow.
like, dang, that's a lot of power.
Yeah.
So standard bed length of 5 feet but extendable to 8 with a mid-gate.
Oh, you're getting this
Oh.
too.
So, so I guess the company is saying they're going to try and get it in production in 2026. So
In the US.
in the US, it's an American company.
Huh.
So I think it's cool. It's the styling is unique. I'll just leave it at
It
that.
looks like it should be a Citroen or something. It
It's
really,
it's
it's
got a
bizarre.
European kind of vibe to it. Yeah.
And the door handles are like my F-250. They're reverse in, which is
Uh-huh.
not the aerodynamic way to do things if you're going to do
Yeah.
it. They're like little air pockets. It's a very strange design. Is this actually going to happen?
Your
And
guess
don't
is
give
as
me
good
the
as
answer
mine.
of, yeah, okay. I thought you were going to say, well, they say it's going to.
No, you know what? I've learned not to make predictions about companies' chances anymore.
The
So,
weird part is the front tires look like it actually, the tires might extend beyond the nose of the vehicle. I don't even know if you can do that.
yeah, I saw that, and my question about that, I'm not an engineer or stylist, is the effect on drag.
No, this doesn't look effective in any way, shape, or form. I bet you can't have tires extend beyond the front of the vehicle just for crash testing. There's no way that this is going to be aerodynamic. Uh,
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah.
So,
I don't I would have, again, this is just an assumption on my part. I would assume they would have done CAD simulations on for crash tests,
that's cute.
stuff like that.
That's cute.
Am I
They
giving them too
saw
much credit?
Yeah, they saw people investing in EVs and they
So,
managed to
oh,
get
let's
somebody
do
to
this.
drop. This probably dates back this company. I don't know anything, so I'm making all this up. This probably dates back 3 or 4 years. Remember when we were at LA Auto Show and it was just like startup,
Mhm.
startup, startup, and then there was the guy that yelled "what" or whatever it was in the middle of some um one of
Oh
the press
gosh, what was that
conferences
company?
with
I know what you're talking about.
Mueller something Mullen.
Mullen. Mullen. Yeah.
There's all this. There was so much money being jammed
Yeah.
into EV startups, and I bet you this is a remnant of that.
And they're like, ooh, let's do something.
Yeah. So I bet that this is got almost no CAD flow design anything. I bet this is just they have taken it when it says same length as a Mini Cooper. I bet it's a Mini Cooper. That it's like that truck we saw. Remember the truck? It was actually a Tacoma with bodywork on it, and then they claimed it was like
Oh,
it was like
yeah.
a Tacoma body on an off-roading frame, and
And
then
like
they
a Cybertruck you bought off Temu.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
crazy, but that was all part of this like
Yeah.
influx of money, and nobody was really designing anything that was realistic. They were getting money coming in, and
Hmm.
then they were able to make some money personally with no intention whatsoever of
Hmm.
producing a vehicle. I mean, this is crazy that they've actually got a vehicle that some guy can stand in front of. That's
Yeah.
amazing. If it works, if it runs, that's even better. I haven't watched the
No,
video.
I
Link in the
mean,
show
so
notes.
I'll just tell you this. Specs look cool, styling, you know, whatever. But I like the capabilities that they're claiming. So important if true. So you ready for the final?
Sure. What are you going to shock me with?
Okay. So this is going back to will will the Bubbas ever embrace EVs? Well, so guess two personalities who've announced they're going to buy a Tesla. Can you care to guess?
If I would not have peeked, there is no way in the world I would have guessed this, but it makes sense. So it's Sean Hannity
Because
and
if you don't know, is a right wing commentator on Fox News.
Trump supposedly
Yeah, no,
who
he actually held a press conference at the White House
to
with
say he bought a
basically
car,
with the entire Tesla lineup behind him.
to say he bought a car. He held a press conference to say he bought a car.
Yeah, to say
I'm sorry.
Elon has been
Isn't the
treated
stock
very
market
badly. You need to support Elon.
isn't the stock market crashing right now? And he holds a press conference to say he purchased a car? Um, I'm done.
That's the world we live in,
I'm
I guess.
done.
Anyway, so I mean, we'll see. I mean, if he all of a sudden gets everyone interested in EVs, who knows? But
It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. You can't. It's yeah. Okay.
but like
Everything.
I just the final cherry on top. I'm just gonna say it. I've said this. I'm gonna keep saying this. I don't care who's in the White House, butts and seats. If you drive a newer EV and you're not at all familiar with them, I guarantee you you'll be surprised. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, the flip side to that is Trump can't drive his car
Exactly.
because presidents
That's
aren't
the
allowed to
irony.
drive. So he's held a press conference to say he bought a car that he can't drive.
I've just bought a car,
Fantastic.
but I can't drive it.
Everything we talked about will be linked in the show notes. Show notes can be found in the podcast and also on thewhatcar.com. You can find us on social media. We're kind of everywhere, I guess. We're on Blue Sky, everywhere except for a place that starts with an X. Due to my reasons, I think I think you're more business savvy than I am. I let my emotions dictate what I do. We don't have a Patreon, but we do have a thewhatcar.com/store. All the money that comes from there, all the profits from that go into producing this podcast and the blog, which is not expensive, but it is not free. So that helps out a lot. We are on YouTube, youtube.com/@thewhatcar, and you can leave comments on videos there. We'll read them and ignore them. Much like I ignore the emails at hello@thewhatcar.com, which you can email us there. And Tilo, is that how you said that? Is that how you say the name? Tilo? Not Tello, which the phone company, but Tilo. They should go to thewhatcar.com/advertise. And some of that money that you have left over from whatever funds you got in several years ago that you're now drastically trying to spend to prove your the fact that you didn't scam somebody. I think that's how that works. So they go to thewhatcar.com/advertise and they can throw money at us, and I will change my tune and say how great the company is and how they
It's the American way.
It's the American way. There you go. I'm gone.
Some cool stuff coming up, but we'll share more about that when it finally comes together.
All right. See y'all.